going on, family? Happy Tuesday, happy Tuesday, happy Tuesday. We up in here. How y'all doing? How y'all doing? Hope y'all staying warm out there on the back end of this winter storm that has hit the country. So please stay warm. Please stay safe out there in these streets. Don't be out here being crazy in these streets. Make sure you keep it safe, yourself safe, your family safe, everybody safe out here in these streets, because we want to make it to the next day, you know. But we got a good show tonight. Of course, you know it's a school night, so we ain't gonna be here all night, but we're gonna make the time count that we are here. We're looking at a video, a debate rather, put together by the one and only Mr. Jason Whitlock. So immediately when I know it's Jason Whitlock, I'm doing a little side eye, but I got my ears open and I'm listening. They're having a debate about the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. The title of the video is, should we reevaluate the legacy of MLK Jr. and the Civil Rights Movement? And it's a debate between Chad O. Jackson and Delano Squires. And Chad O. Jackson is he's arguing against Dr. King's legacies, and Delano Squires is arguing for Dr. King's legacy. And I thought it was an interesting debate for us to chime in on, to break down, to, you know, to look at and see what they're talking about. So that's what we're looking at tonight, because, you know, on this channel, we tell the truth. We do our best to tell the truth. I don't know it all, and I would never jump out there acting like I know it all. So I'm always open to learn some things of being schooled and all that stuff there. But, you know, I do know a little bit. And when it comes to Dr. Martin Luther King, you know, on this channel, we talked about his good and his bad, his shortcomings, and things that helped to cement his legacy. So we are going to get into those things tonight. Of course, you always know, don't bring your feelings to this channel, because we're about constructive conversations leading to constructive outcomes, seeing how we can break this information down, take it back and use it in our everyday lives. You know how we do. That's why I stay shadow banned. I was talking to Patrick earlier. We was on the phone. I stay shadow banned because we stay teaching over here. We stay teaching, so I stay shadow banned by YouTube. They be tripping. But please hit that like button, comment, subscribe, share, because we're getting it in tonight and we set some things straight. And Jason Whitlock think he's slick. Oh, Jason Whitlock think he's slick. Yeah, Jason Whitlock is basically trying to take a dump on Dr. King's legacy, because he got some things against Dr. King, but hell, Jason, we got a whole lot of things against your ass. So, Terrell, what's going on, my brother? I hope you staying warm as well. I'm down here in Florida, so it ain't that bad, but it's cold for us. It's Florida cold. Stefan Mason Bay, what's going on? How you doing? How you doing? How you doing? Renee, you already know what it is. How you doing, my sister? How you doing? Chosen Sigma, how you doing? He was for Satan free. Oh, come on. You can't say he was for Satan. If he was for Satan, Freemasons, they wouldn't have took him out. If he was for them all the way. I'm not saying he wasn't manipulated. I'm not saying he wasn't compromised. I would never say he was not compromised at all. And I would never say that he wasn't an appointed leader, but you already know. What's going on, Nemesis? Say, I'm going to jail for this one. How dare you say anything about Martin Luther the King? Acting like black people can be allowed to critically think about things. Hey, man, well, you know how I do. That's why we stay shadow banned, because we stay thinking over here. We stay thinking over here, so stay shadow banned over here. But actually, so I'm neither defending him nor against him. We're just looking at the facts, and then we're going to talk about the facts. That's what we're getting into tonight. So y'all already know how we do. So once again, please hit that like button, comment, subscribe, and share so we can get into it. But of course, you know I got to run my commercial, so check this out. So I told y'all I was going to get my merch shop up and running, so I've got it. So I want to show y'all my merch shop. So this is it. So I got some hats. So I got my own The Shoulders of Giants hats available for order. I have shirts. This supposed to be like a canvas, some kind of shirt, jersey shirt. I don't know why they got that design, but it's a jersey shirt. Somebody wanted. They got hoodies, regular shirts, heavy, what they call it, the heavy tee, tees for men's, unisex tees for women. 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% everything. I got a mug. I gotta get this mug too. But this is the merch that I have available. See, I got my mug, I have my hats, and I have my apparel available. And all of that is, the links and stuff are below and connected to the video. So I got my merch shop up and running, been working on that for a minute in the background to get my merch shop up and running. So I got it up and running. So if you want to support the channel and get you some merch, it's all available, links below and links attached to the video. Yeah. So please support. Links are below to support. Link to this full video that we're looking at is in the description. Of course, you know, it's a school night, so we may not get to the full video. It's a 2-hour video, so I know we're not gonna get to the full video. But as I said earlier, tonight we're talking about one of the most influential figures in American history, you know, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And the question is, should we reevaluate his legacy in the civil rights movement? Of course, you know, it's posed by Jason Whitlock, so take that into account. So Dr. King emerged as one of the most powerful voices against racial segregation and legal discrimination in the United States. You know, we know him from being able to lead and being a part of the voices with the Montgomery bus boycott, the March to Washington. His leadership helped catalyze transformative national change, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. He did this largely through a disciplined commitment to nonviolence resistance, inspired by Gandhi's moral philosophy. Importantly, his letter from Birmingham jail remains a prominent document explaining why nonviolent direct action was necessary when traditional legal routes failed to deliver justice. Of course, you know, this is his ideology. What's going on, Amina? How you doing? How you doing? And of course, you know, Nemesis shadow banning is how it goes down. You know, you said it's Carlito over there on the Hip Hop Cartoons put the post out that his channel is getting suppressed again. Yep. We all getting shadow banned. Everybody who out here teaching getting shadow banned, but we're gonna keep teaching. All we need people to do is keep showing up. So all people got to do is keep showing up to the channels. But critics at the time for Dr. Martin Luther King challenged his strategies and calls for patience. And later he expanded his critique beyond segregation to include war, poverty, and systematic economic inequality, stances that even alienated some of his former allies. Declassified FBI records now show the extent to which he was surveilled and targeted by the U.S. government, right? Raising even more complex questions about his politics surrounding his legacy. Please hit that like button. What's going on, Door of L? How you doing, my brother? How you doing? Tonight, we having fun, but we also putting our critical thinking caps on, because once again, we're not trying to dump on Dr. King, and we're not just trying to celebrate him, but we are telling the truth, right? So we're not just asking what Dr. King meant to the civil rights movement or to American culture, but what his full body of work tells us about the unfinished struggle for equality and justice. We'll look at the good, the undeniable victories that reshaped our laws and national consciousness, and also aspects that are less often discussed, the bad as well, right? So his economic justice campaign, his anti-war stance, internal debates within the movement, and how history remembers him. That's what we're getting into tonight with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. All right, so Gregory Jones, what's going on, my brother? What's going on? What's going on? So let's jump into this video. And everybody from Facebook, what's going on? Everybody from Instagram, how y'all doing? Thank y'all for tuning in. We're getting it in. Please hit that like button. Please hit that like button. So let me share my screen and we're gonna get into it. The great MLK debate really going down. Uh-oh, my bad, wrong one. My bad, I shared the wrong screen. Here we go. All right, let's do this. Please hit that like button. Let's get it.
I still have a dream.
And Chad's response is, well, of course you would say that he's a Marxist.
In fact, he slept with you before he died.
That one day, this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed.
The issue was never the issue. The issue was the revolution.
That's part of what we do. We air our grievances.
Free at last! Free at last!
Welcome to the Harmony Channel. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy MLK Day to those who celebrate. It is Martin Luther King Jr. Day across America. We wanted to have a special conversation about Dr. King's legacy because it is now being questioned. Is it a force for good, force for bad? Is it necessary? And so I've invited two guys familiar to my audience, Delano Squires and Chad O. Jackson, to have a conversation with me today about MLK, his legacy, his importance to American history. Was he a force for good? Was he for a force for bad? Delano will argue the pro-MLK side. Chad, who's got his own documentary on MLK, will argue the anti-MLK side. But before we get into this debate, which I'm really looking forward to and hope that you all enjoy, I'm hoping that maybe there will be schools or young people that watch this discussion and learn from this discussion. But before, I'll let these guys introduce themselves, give you a little bit about their qualifications, why they're qualified to participate in this debate, and tell you a little bit about themselves. Delano, get us started.
I'll bet you didn't know winter is one of the best times to care for your trees. Here's why. When spring arrives,
I ain't gonna lie. Whenever I see Jason Whitlock, I'm side-eyeing the whole everything that's going on. And I'm side-eyeing anybody that's rocking with Jason Whitlock, because Jason Whitlock always has nefarious motives when it comes to analyzing Black people. We know Jason Whitlock is one of those males. He's not a man. He's a male that toot his lips up to kiss white people's butts. We know Jason Whitlock want to be loved by white people. He want to be loved particularly by white men. We know that. And Jason Whitlock will put the tap dance shoes on, put the white gloves on, and hide his way all around so white people can love him. So any platform that I see from him, especially one from Jason Whitlock, where you're critiquing Dr. King's legacy, I'm definitely side-eyeing Jason Whitlock. You said the other two guys are you saying they're the same? I'm not familiar with Delano Squires, but I'm familiar with Chad O. Jackson. I know Chad he says that he's an independent, but he talks real right leaning. And you're gonna see what I mean in this. So let's keep it going though.
Well, again, Delano Squires, been a long time contributor to the Blaze. I have been writing on issues around race and culture for quite some time. Actually, I wrote a piece for the Blaze on MLK. Actually, I've written two pieces on MLK for the Blaze. And in addition to that, I write a fair amount about sort of the future of Black America. My focus is typically on the family, but I do see some linkages between what has gone on in the past and what lies in front of us in the future. So I'm excited about this. I'm looking forward to this debate and looking forward to chopping it up with Chad.
Delano, you just left out, you work for the Heritage Foundation.
That is true. Sorry. I'm the director for the Center for Human Flourishing at the Heritage Foundation.
All right. Chad O. Jackson, a plumber and a historian.
Yeah. So I'm Chad Jackson, as Jason just mentioned. I am the owner of a plumbing company out of Dallas, Texas, also a documentary filmmaker. Right now we're doing a docuseries on MLK called the MLK Project. This topic is something that I've been researching for years. And in fact, the film company that I own and operate, Historia Revelata, basically seeks to go back into history and to really look at the facts of what we have on hand and to try to recontextualize it for the preservation of Western civilization, quite frankly. So I'm excited to get into this debate. I'm a huge admirer of Delano's work. He's a prolific writer on family issues. And so, yeah, I'm really ready to get into it.
Perfect. So we're going to start. There's going to be 5 different topics here. And I'm going to give each of these guys, because just quite frankly, these guys are long-winded. I'm going to try to discipline them a little bit. But on each of these topics, I'm going to give them both 4 minutes to state their opinions, establish their positions, 4 minutes uninterrupted. I don't think this will be hard for these guys. I've given them some time to think about it. And so each will take 4 minutes, and then I'll let them rebut each other for 2 minutes uninterrupted. And then we'll just have a back and forth conversation about one of the 5 topics we're having. And so each of these 5 topics, we'll spend about 20 minutes on each of them. And so to get us started, Delano's going to go first. And so our opening question is, was Martin Luther King Jr. and the Civil Rights Movement a force for good or a net negative for America in general and Black people in particular?
So the question is, was Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement good or bad for Black America? And he said for America and Black Americans, but I'm focused more on Black America. I don't care about America as a whole. But was Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement good or bad? Well, of course, I've been putting out my Dr. Claude Anderson lectures, and I put out lectures from other scholars and stuff. When we talk about the bad of the Civil Rights Movement. We know that the Civil Rights Movement had some things that wasn't great for us. And so we do have to acknowledge that. But I don't think Dr. King himself overall was bad for us. I think Dr. King had some growing up to do. Young Dr. King and compromised Dr. King wasn't the best for us. But later on, they took him out for a reason. Let's remember that they took him out for a reason. So do he have some things that he's done that we don't agree with? Of course. And we're gonna get into it as the conversation goes. But I wouldn't say that Dr. King himself overall was bad for Black America. I do think that there was some fallouts from the Civil Rights Movement that did hurt Black America. And we're probably still reeling for some of those things now. I will say that, but I do think that it was some good and bad from both. But overall, I think Dr. King gave us more good than bad, and I think the Civil Rights Movement may have gave us a little more bad than good. But we're gonna see. I could be wrong, so we're gonna see.
My position is that MLK and the Civil Rights generation were a force for good, both for America and for Black people in general. I think it's important to contextualize the work that Dr. King and his associates did in the Civil Rights generation. And when I say contextualize, again, think of what life would have been like for a man in the 1960s, right? Probably the grandson, or at worst, the great grandson of people who of enslaved
Gregory
Black people in this particular country. And he comes along, and he's most known for the Civil Rights Act of 1964. But prior to that, between the end of the Civil War and 1964, there were, to my recollection, 5 different civil rights acts and 3 Reconstruction amendments. So there were several times throughout American history, again, post-Civil War, where the federal government said, we need to pass legislation to protect the rights of Black Americans. And clearly those things did not have the intended effect. So my position is what Dr. King did, and again, his peers in that generation, was a force for good. I think one of the arguments is that, well, look at where the Black community is now and what people do. And I would say, to be fair, I believe Chad does this at times as well, is to say Black America is in a worse position now than it was in 1965 as it relates to several different measures. I say first and foremost being the family. And because of that, we believe that the Civil Rights Act was a mistake. How civil rights were delivered to Black Americans, the process has led to damage within Black America. And again, I reject that position. And I'll put it simply this way. If you are a Black person who wants to go to school where you want, to live where you want, to shop where you want, to marry who you want, then you owe some debt of gratitude to the generation that came before you. So, I mean, that's my general position. And I think, again, this is consistent. The idea that there should be efforts to eradicate differences in treatment based on race is consistent both with our constitutional history and, history post 1776. Really quick, I just want to read a quick few lines.
You got a minute and 19.
Okay.
Yeah.
A quick few lines from Justice Harlan. This is the dissent in Plessy versus Ferguson. He said, "In the eye of the law, there is in this country no superior, dominant ruling class of citizens. There is no caste here. Our Constitution is colorblind and neither knows nor tolerates classes among citizens. In respect of civil rights, all citizens are equal before the law. The humblest is the peer of the most powerful. The arbitrary separation of citizens on the basis of race while they are on a public highway is a badge of servitude wholly inconsistent with the civil freedom and the equality before the law established by the Constitution." This was in Plessy versus Ferguson. Brown versus Board of Ed overturned that particular decision. And again, he was the lone dissenter in Plessy. So I see King's work as a continuation of that thread from the Civil War, from the end of the Civil War through Reconstruction, that said, finally, we need laws in place that ensure that American citizens are no longer discriminated against based on race.
So, and like I said, he's arguing like for the legacy of Dr. King, and Chad O. Jackson is arguing against the legacy of Dr. King. So I would say this, and like we're saying in the comments, like one of the things I don't like about the way like Jason Whitlock and Chad is framing this conversation about Dr. King is like what Gregory and you the Jet is saying, like there was an evolution in Dr. King, and Dr. King admitted that he messed up. He admitted that he was wrong. Like you the Jet saying, he admitted that he was they led his people into a burning building. He understood that, as the evolution happened. And, I was thinking earlier, and not to make this about Malcolm, because I want to focus on Dr. King, but we're looking at two men who had to evolve, who actually evolved into something that was dangerous to the government, right? Malcolm, of course, a lot more because of his affiliation with the Nation of Islam. More earlier looked at as a danger, but even Dr. King looked at as a danger, but even more as he evolved into more of a free-thinking man, because both men were a lot of times parroting the ideologies of their elders, their jagnas, their mentors and things, right? And so as they evolved into their own ideas, their own thoughts, their own things, they became a lot more dangerous to the ones who were feeding them the information in the beginning. That's why neither one of them are here. Also, what was I gonna say? I think I said everything I need to say, but looking at Dr. King, like it's just once again, they framed the conversation from a lot of times, especially Chad frames his conversation, his arguments against Dr. King, a lot of times solely just based off the "I have a dream" speech. Of course, that it's not the true name of the speech, but that's what we call it. But once again, if you're going to look at somebody and if you're going to critique somebody, you have to critique their full legacy, but also taking into account, like we did a couple videos ago, taking into account like the people who were part of the civil rights movement. I believe the majority of the people who were part of the civil rights movement were out there for a force for good. They may not have known that some of their leaders were compromised. And even Dr. King, once again, was a leader who was placed in charge of the civil rights movement because, like we talked about a couple of videos ago, Dr. Vernon Johns was in that leadership spot, but they moved him out because he was labeled too radical. And so they put Dr. King in, a younger, more malleable leader that they could help to mold to lead what they wanted to lead. But then the thing about him is he evolved. So we admit that he messed up. He admitted it. but you got to admit the evolution as well. And that's one thing that I don't like, the way that they frame their arguments is as if Dr. King didn't evolve. So you have to take into account everything. Look at the good and the bad.
It's so easy to become a podcaster with Riverside. First, go to Riverside and open an account. When you're
Delano, good opening statement. Chad, I do want to, before you go.
And so, and real quick, not to keep stopping it so much, but to Gregory Jones's comment, I'm going to find it. I have audio from Ossie Davis. I have a little audio clip from Ossie Davis talking about how Malcolm and Martin were about to start collaborating and really working together before they were taken out. So, yes.
I want to advise you, you can rebut what Delano says after you give your opening statement. So the opening statement doesn't have to be a direct rebuttal to what Delano said. So let me restate the question. We'll restart the clock here. Was Martin Luther King Jr. and the Civil Rights Movement a force for good or a net negative for America in general and Black people in particular?
Well, the truth of the matter is that the Civil Rights Movement and King were not a force for good. Really what they were a force for federal expansion and the USSR propaganda. The USSR, the Soviet Union, literally called the Civil Rights Movement in America the strategic propaganda asset, because that's exactly what they were. When you look at King's organization, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, there was a direct line and an indirect line of communication between them and the Soviet Union. This goes back to the 1930s under the FDR administration, where you had the National Negro Congress, which was started by a commission out of the FDR administration, and Joseph Stalin himself. A. Philip Randolph was the leader of that organization. And by the time you get to the 1960s, he would hand the baton off to Martin Luther King. And so there has always been communist infiltration in the Civil Rights Movement, and it didn't change under Martin Luther King's leadership. I argue that this is a force for bad and is a detriment to Black Americans and to America at large, insofar that the communist ideology is antithetical to our way of life. It's antithetical to genuine success. I know Delano writes a lot about family values. He writes a lot about conventional methods and means to becoming successful. Communism is antithetical and downright hostile to those conventional means that my parents and grandparents and great-grandparents undertook to become successful. Whether you're talking about in rural Arkansas, whether you're talking about in rural Oklahoma, where my folks are from, or in Texas, where I live now. When you look at this notion of what Marxism breeds in terms of exploiting grievances, as Thomas Sowell documents, as well as the late Walter E. Williams and other scholars, you saw this kind of upward mobility, this upward trajectory on the part of colored people from the 19th century well into the 1940s and 50s. And then as this kind of cultural Marxist rhetoric, this kind of feel sorry for me grievance rhetoric began to take off with the help of the press on the part of the civil rights activists, you saw the spirit of embitterness really enter colored culture, what we now call Black culture. And that has had an adverse effect on, again, not only Black culture, but also the larger American society. And I'll end by saying this. When you look at the late Nikki Giovanni, who was a poet, a radical Marxist feminist, she said in an interview with James Baldwin that Black folks in America, she acknowledged this, Black folks in America have always been successful and have always had businesses. People can look this up on YouTube right now. She said that, however, my generation, we were not good business people. We were good civil rights people. We decided to become activists. And when you look at the fact that from around that time to today, you see this kind of widening of the disparities, gaps, and so on and so forth. And you see this kind of embracing this bitterness and the spirit of entitlement that we now have. And you look at what King was saying in the 1960s, along with people like James Baldwin and others, they were really instilling the spirit of bitterness. And this was part of the kind of Soviet propaganda program that they were that they were implementing. And so, no, it was a complete detriment to the larger American society.
We're good.
So, can't really take this serious moment. I see Jason Whitlock. Right. Of course, I told y'all from the top, Jason Whitlock, this is his debate that he put together. So now one of the things that I've noticed as I was watching this video the other day ago is I believe Chad is more so arguing. He's arguing that Dr. King basically is against capitalism in an American way. It's almost like he's arguing that Dr. King was anti-American because of the ties that he would have had, or the ideas that were either communist or Marxist, or similar to communism or Marxism, right? But I would argue that because he's saying that these ideas in the civil rights movement really helped to destroy Black America, but I would argue against that. I would say, well, the gains from the civil, and of course throw the bunny ears up when you say gains, from our scholars and our historians, and history tells us that whenever these civil rights laws and these things that are put in, other people benefit from those more than Black people. So America itself doesn't get worse. Other people get the benefits, and Black people get the crumbs from all these so-called civil rights acts that are put out. But also, as long as Black people are under systems that are European in nature, I don't care what economic system it is, Black people are going to be on the bottom, because you can argue against this. You can make the same arguments against capitalism, right? And he's talking about the Black businesses. You got to remember, Black businesses and Black America's economic base didn't fall because Black people started becoming politically active. They failed because white people destroyed them. Let's be historically accurate. Let's be real. Black businesses were destroyed. And guess what? Any group of people who's oppressed, you'll be a fool not to fight back. But Black businesses didn't fall because people became politically active. They fell because white people destroyed them. And Black people would be oppressed as long as the system of white supremacy exists, no matter what the economic system is. It's been proven Black people are on the bottom when it comes to capitalism. Of course, he likes capitalism. None of us, at the end of the day, most of us in the West world, we talk about capitalism, but none of us are really against capitalism. But let's just be real. Any economic system that would cause a person like him, any economic system that he would thrive in, he would be for. If he could thrive in communism, he would be for communism. If he could thrive in Marxism, he would be for Marxism. Come on, Chad, stop the bull. Come on, you said bingo, the ironist projection of his alliance well with anti-Black American propaganda. You already know it, Darkfire. From his standpoint, civil rights being Black focused does hurt the Black community. His Black community that values proximity to power as opposed to building your own. I mean, but it's like, and that's the thing too, like the facade that white America actually built their own, and white folk don't get bailed out by the government, and white people never lifted themselves up by their bootstraps. It was either through free labor or government help that put white people in positions of economic power. Either free labor or government help. Hell, these white folk still getting bailed out by the government now. They need to stop it. There's never no white people pulling themselves up by their bootstraps en masse. Stop it. You might have some individuals who do that, but come on, man. Historically, either other people's free labor or government bailouts. And it's documented. There are privileges, if they can be given and taken away, rights are inalienable, earned, and able to be protected against. So, well, I do kind of challenge that as far as rights, because whoever has the power gets to dole out the rights. And that's the world we've always lived in. If you have the power, you get to dole out the rights. If you want the rights, you have to acquire power. At the end of the day, it's all about power. And black people, we need to acquire power. See, I keep saying stuff like that. That's why I keep getting shadow banned. But I get what you're saying. I don't totally disagree with you, Gregory, but I do know, at the end of the day, if we don't have the power, then we can't even protect the rights that we say are inalienable, because other people can come in and take them away from us because we don't have the means to protect that. So once we get the power that we need, we can not only protect our rights, but hell, we can dole out rights if we want to. So, but yeah, let's keep this thing going.
Delano, we'll restart the clock in 2 minutes. Delano, go ahead with your rebuttal.
So I find it interesting when you asked Chad whether MLK was a force for good. One of his first moves was to talk about the civil rights sort of era with respect to federal expansion. And I'm not surprised because I've consumed a fair amount of Chad's work. Not all of it. I mean, so Chad is a prolific documentarian, and I give him credit for that. But at times it seems as if Chad seems to believe that government becomes more moral the closer it gets to the people.
Right, Terrell.
So for him,
Greg, we on the same page.
And again, Chad, you will correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm hearing is the federal expansion, federal overreach, from his perspective, is really the main sin here. And I would counter that by asking pointedly whether Chad believes that, let's say in 1965, 64, 55, that separate spaces, right? Basically, should black folks have been continued to be subjected to separate public accommodations, separate entrances, whether it's water fountains, restaurants, restrictive housing covenants, anti-miscegenation laws. Chad, is your perspective that those things should have stayed in place until such time when the populace within a particular state said, we are ready to no longer discriminate against our black citizens in the ways that we have been doing? Is that your position?
I'll articulate my position in a more elaborate way when I get a chance.
Okay.
I don't know if I can answer that in a simple yes or no.
Yes, you can.
But with a gun to my head, I would say yes, because that's in keeping with what Booker T. Washington laid out, and that was actually yielding the fruit that it was desired to yield.
This is how I'd learn AI in 2026 if I wanted a fresh start at 50. Watch this.
Never. And
So we can come back to that in the back and forth.
Let's let him ask.
Closer it gets to the people. So for him, and again, Chad, you will correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm hearing is the federal expansion, federal overreach, from his perspective, is really the main sin here. And I would counter that by asking pointedly whether Chad believes that, let's say in 1965, 64, 55, that separate spaces, right? Basically, should black folks have been continued to be subjected to separate public accommodations, separate entrances, whether it's water fountains, restaurants, restrictive housing covenants, anti-miscegenation laws. Chad, is your perspective that those things should have stayed in place until such time when the populace within a particular state said, we are ready to no longer discriminate against our black citizens in the ways that we have been doing? Is that your position?
I'll articulate my position in a more elaborate way when I get a chance. I don't know if I can answer that in a simple yes or no. But with a gun to my head, I would say yes, because that's in keeping with what Booker T. Washington laid out, and that was actually yielding the fruit that it was desired to yield.
So we can come back to that in the back and forth.
So, of course, we don't totally disagree with what Chad's answer to that quick answer, like separate. Basically, we should not have integrated. We should not have fought to integrate. We should have fought for specific rights for black people. But Chad still has the angle of making sure we can keep our proximity to whiteness. I'm saying, no, we should have stayed in the position to empower ourselves, to aggregate our wealth. Should we be able to live in a society where we should be able to go wherever we want to go? Yes, but under the system of white supremacy, that was one of the things that bit the civil rights movement in the butt, is, in my opinion, not a full understanding of the system of white supremacy. The people who were involved in the system, who were involved in the civil rights movement, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I'll take it. But from what I've seen, it seems like a true lack of understanding of what the system of white supremacy is, because so many people were trying to appeal to the moral conscience of racists. You can't appeal to the moral conscience of racists. That's not how they operate. It's about power. And so they didn't understand that just because you're saying these things to these people, you're having these movements, you're doing these various acts and things, that doesn't mean that white people will fully accept you. Now, of course, integration happened and we lost more than we gained. So I do agree in the sense of us losing more than we gained. So there are some things that we do agree with, Chad, but integration at the end of the day, it hurt us because we lost a lot of the things that we built for ourselves. And then we went away from building for ourselves because the white ice was colder. So in that vein, but it's for the empowerment of us, not for us to have proximity to whiteness. James Pryor said integration was the worst thing that happened to us before we had our own business. And remember too, so that's why I keep reminding people to read Destruction of Black Civilization. Read Destruction of Black Civilization. Read Destruction of Black Civilization, right? But also study the history of Black people in America. By the time integration happened, think how beat down we were. By the time the transatlantic slave trade started, think about how go read and see how beat down Africa was. They always come in with and that's a part of their advantage, is to, kick us while we're down and kick us hard while we're down. So integration was a thing that did not help because we gave up a lot of our power. But at the same time, for Chad, we're not looking for white proximity. We're not looking for to be praised by the white man. We're looking to be able to build our things on our own and be left alone. But of course, under the system of white supremacy, that's not how that works. You must always be able to protect yourself. As a matter of fact, that's how the world works, especially when you're dealing with heathens like that. So,
aspect of this. Delano, if you got 20, 30 more seconds, if you had anything else you wanted to rebut, or we can...
No, we can go to chat.
It looks like he just wants to move right into the...
No. You got your time.
Fine.
Reclaim the time.
Restart the clock, 2 minutes, and you can rebut what you heard from Delano.
So one of the things that Delano brought up in his opening statements, which was he brought up what life was like. And with all due respect, this is one of the things that the left often does, which is they really kind of lean into the art of storytelling.
America, and I agree, Gigi, and I agree, but I would expand that and say America itself was the maldistribution of resources, not just Jim Crow, but America itself. The evolution of America itself is the maldistribution of resources.
And imagine yourself as a black man in the 1930s or what have you, so as to really kind of push this notion or this narrative that the conditions were such that there needed to be drastic, radical change. But the thing about it is, when you look at the rhetoric of revolution that a lot of the civil rights activists and the other social justice activists were really pushing in those days, this idea of revolution, a lot of it was the exacerbation, the exaggeration, the exploitation of grievances. This is part of the kind of Marxist framework. We try to find a grievance, we exploit it to the hills, and we try to get people riled up enough to where they then will take to the streets. It will cause unrest. It will cause this kind of destabilization phase. And out of that destabilization, people will cry out for the federal government to come in and do something about it. When you read Risa Galliabuff's book, she's a professor out of Virginia Law School. She wrote a book called The Lost Promise of Civil Rights, and she's not ideologically on my side. She's a leftist. but she even makes the point that, you know, the civil rights division of the Justice Department was built for the purpose of government expansion, which goes back to the question that you had about, is it my view that the closer you get to the people, the more moral the government is? In a sense, yes. Because the fact of the matter is we are a country made up of diverse people with diverse backgrounds and diverse beliefs. And this is why I would side more with the anti-federalists, Patrick Henry, Robert Yates, Luther Martin, and others, that believe that to the extent that you try to have this big, overarching, strong federal power that's centralized, you're going to have the kind of resentment, the kind of unrest, and all the things that breed from that, because we are so diverse. So you need to have it kind of condensed down as much as you possibly can to make it closer to the people.
So, well,
build a website you love with Wix. Were your words?
so
At this point,
was the civil rights movement itself compromised? Yes, but it's almost like he's framing it as if this is the beginning of Black people fighting for civil rights. This is the beginning of Black people standing up against white supremacy. Like, yes, the civil rights movement itself did not yield what we expected it to yield for us, but the spirit of revolution should always be alive and well in Black people. We should never lie, because I'm wondering, and it's a long video, so I can't remember everything, but I'm wondering what his solution is to standing up against the system of white supremacy or anything like that. I have to study him more, but the spirit of revolution should never die in Black people. And the spirit of revolution have been in us since they brought us here. And it should continue in us. Of course, it's not as abundant as it needs to be, but the spirit of revolution should never die in the people. And you should never lie down and take and accept oppression, but also the different ideologies of like Carter G. Woodson, Booker T. Watson, Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois, all the different ones. You know, we had all these scholars with competing ideas, and you know, what if they would have just sat down and put their ideas together? But I think that was by design as well. And when you have leaders that are appointed and put in place, it's designed for them to not work together. But just what if they would have put the ideas together? Our conversations would be a lot different if they would have put those ideas together instead of having competing ideas, because I believe they had different pieces of the puzzle. So when he tries to use, one of the scholars to say, hey, this is why my point is correct. Well, no, that's just a point of view, because we can look at all these scholars and see that their single point of view did not get us to where we need to go. But if they would have put those ideas together, oh man, how beautiful it would have been. A lesson learned from history. How do we not be contentious and collaborate?
it's on you all. You go back and forth. If you got questions you want to ask or whatever, do it now. We can go knock yourself out.
So where Chad started there was, I almost fell out of my.
Hold on, it's telling me my screen share messed up. Hold on, my share screen messed up. I keep sharing the wrong one. My bad. All right, we back.
And one of the things that I've said this publicly, so I can say it here, is that when I consume Chad's work, I notice the use oftentimes of adjectives where I think verbs should be. One of the favorites is nefarious, right? So instead of saying this person said this or this person did that, what Chad would say is, oh, this particular act, the law was passed under nefarious circumstances. That's the art of storytelling. Chad, in his opener, talked about how Black people lived in the South, and I've heard him talk about there was more harmony between Blacks and whites in the South than people want to give credit to, and that might be the case in some places, in some locales. But the notion that storytelling is sort of the exclusive province of the left is something that that's, come on now, we can't say that. So that was one small point. But again, I would ask Chad, do you think that a Black man who wanted to shop in a particular retailer and was told you cannot shop here because you are a Black man had a legitimate grievance, let's say in the year 1955?
No.
Okay.
Because we have freedom of association.
Okay.
And if a white store owner don't want you shopping in their store, I believe it's their right to not allow you to shop in their store. And on the contrary, I believe if you're a Black man who owns a store and don't want white people coming in, that's perfectly your right. It doesn't make it right, but it is your freedom of association. And so I believe that matters such as that should be handled in the marketplace. I don't believe that we should cede to the government the right to force people to serve those whom they don't want to serve, or hire whom they don't want to hire for, or not be able to fire people for certain reasons that they find to be fitting. And so yes, this idea that it is a legitimate grievance that a Black man who was denied the transaction of buying a sandwich should now go to the government and have the government come down and put a gun to the person's head to serve me. I don't believe in that level of coercion by any stretch of the imagination. I do, however, believe in desegregation. In other words, I don't believe that there should be laws on the books where the state is forcing segregation. And so to that extent, I do believe that those laws should be done away with. And those laws were being done away with. I mean, whether you're talking about, from the turn of the 20th century into the middle part of the 20th century, you did see some of these laws being repealed. And giving credit where credit is due. The NAACP were taking some of these cases to court, and they were having victories in the courts. But then a lot of it too was through people coming together on the ground level, having nothing to do with the government at all. These were what we call interracial commissions, where responsible Negro and white leaders were working out their differences, working out their issues, without it ever getting to the courts or getting to the legislature or what have you. And so this is what we call the reformative process. With the reformative process, you have a character building component in it because it takes hard work.
Well, let me say this. So because he's being very disingenuous. Let's just be real. He's being very disingenuous because, like Gijan's comment is saying, he's talking about freedom in a specific manner, in a specific place. But if Chad O. Jackson has studied America the way he claims he studied, and if he's a scholar the way he claims to be a scholar, then he understands the power dynamics, right? So what are you talking about? Freedom of association, right? So you should have the right to deny somebody service in your private business. Yeah. But you're forgetting one thing, Chad, or you're purposely omitting one thing. There's a power imbalance. That's one of the main things that the Black people are fighting against, this evident power imbalance. So one group of people, so you put freedom of association out there. The group who has the power has the ability to exercise that freedom of association. The group who doesn't have the power will be subjected to the group who has the power imposing that power upon them. So you will be at the mercy of the other group. And like you said, what about, because it wasn't just in private places, it was in public places as well, like Gijan is saying, right? But it's still there's a power imbalance in place, and he's talking as if Black people and white people will be on an equal plane. So you put the freedom of association out there. Only works when two groups of people are equal. It doesn't work when one group of people has power over another group of people. That's called oppression. That's called what they call the segregation, all the things that they were fighting for. So it's easy to say that, well, we could just put the freedom of association out there. Well, what you're going to do about the system of white supremacy in place? What you're going to do about Jim Crow in place? What are you going to do about the actual racist laws and things that are in place that they're fighting against? Come on, Chad.
But once you achieve whatever it is you seek to achieve through that reformative process, it is sustainable insofar that it requires character in order to be maintained. However, when you have the revolutionary process, this quick, sudden uprising that exploits grievances, that sows discord, that creates agitation in the streets, such to where, again, people cry out for federal legislation and quick, fast, and in a hurry right now, to the extent that the new social norm is predicated not on character, but rather law and law alone. That is going to, I mean,
isn't that exactly how white people maintain their power? Isn't that how they reinforce their power? But with the stuff that he's talking about right now, through the law, that they were able to enforce because they have the power, because they're in the position of power, through laws that they impose, through social norms, through social engineering, through societal norms, all those things that are in place that were backed up by law and force, not just a law, because laws don't matter. Laws have to be enforced. It was backed up by force, and not just force when it comes to law enforcement, but force by actual citizens, white citizens against black citizens. Come on, Chad.
First of all, it's artificial, but then two, that new norm that you have will self-implode. It's only a matter of time. And when you look at the Nick Fuentes type, and I know I'm jumping ahead, but when you look at the Nick Fuentes types and you look at this kind of contingent that are now rising up as the pendulum swings from the civil rights industry, that's not sustainable.
So I do agree with that. I do agree that forced integration is not sustainable. Forced integration is a ticking time bomb, because you're forcing white people to give up, or even forcing white people to feel like they're giving up power. So forced integration is a ticking time bomb. But you wouldn't have to force integration if there wasn't a power imbalance in the first place. But we also have to understand that that's how the world works. That's how groups of people do. Groups of people who are in power oppress other groups of people. And some groups of people are more malicious than others. We have to stop acting like the world is a sweet and rosy place. The world is a violent place. You either learn how to fight, or you get your ass whooped out here in this world. That's how the world works. We need to stop acting like morals and spirituality and all these things here are going to change the thing. Like, nah, man. Power. That's why we need to get our stuff together as black people. Stop playing and actually act like a group of people who tired of getting stepped on. And then another thing that he's talking about is, people shouldn't air their grievances. Well, why not? Like when white people got problems, they air their grievances. I bet you white people aired their grievances with the Native Americans and then followed it up with force to take them out. I bet you white people aired their grievances with any enemies and stuff like that. So, I mean, all groups of people air their grievances and matter of fact, white people right now are airing their grievances. White right-wing men right now are crying about losing power in America. What do you have to say about that, Chad? What do you have to say about white men, white right-wing men right now are crying? We've done videos on them. We've done videos on them. They're talking about they losing their position. They're losing their power in America. They're crying right now. They're talking about their grievances. They are trying to revolt against what they feel like is injustices against them, Chad. Guess what, Chad? That's what people do, Chad. And the Delano, I hear Delano, but man, he ain't, and Delano over there, he getting emotional. Look at him, he getting emotional. So,
and it doesn't. Anyway, I've been rambling.
There you go, FM.
So I want to ask two questions to sort of bracket what I understand to be your governing philosophies in 2 periods of time. You talked, excuse me, you used the word revolution. You talked about how, sort of revolutionary change is not sustainable. Would you apply that to the American founding as well?
Well, that's actually a tough question, because the difference is
you can't equate. I'll answer. You can't equate the two. You can't equate the two unless black people usurp the system of white supremacy and be able to sustain ourselves as a power base the way white people were able to. White people were able to usurp the British and create and maintain a power base. Unless black people can usurp the system of white supremacy and maintain and create a power base for ourselves, no. But it's not. It's 2 different things. You're comparing apples to oranges, because you're comparing a group who was able to, who had the resources to actually be an opposing force to the British. We don't have the resources. We've never had the resources to be an actual opposing force. Think about it. We have to join people's wars. When we fight back, we call them uprisings and revolts. We don't call them wars, because they're not organized enough. They're gonna have too many people telling on them and stuff. Chad is also concerned about white males' loss of power. Yeah. You could tell.
You did have a foreign entity that was governing us from afar.
Okay.
And here you've already had a long established culture that has existed for a long period of time. And I would say that it's different than the kind of subversive kind of agitation that we saw with communist revolution.
I mean, there was certainly agitation. There was certainly violence in the streets. There were a list of grievances. Correct.
Yeah, there were grievances. Yeah. But again, the way that communism disseminates through deceptive, subversive means is altogether different than what Thomas Jefferson, for example, was doing in terms of really laying out and airing out the grievances. And of course, if you're talking about like the Boston Tea Party, if you're talking about things like that, where they dressed up in Indian garb and things like that, and they were kind of moving deceptively, point very well taken. But I tend to see what we were doing during the so-called Revolutionary War and the spread of communism as 2 completely different things.
But I think part of that is because you are.
But if he's boiling the civil rights movement down to simply the spread of communism, so I don't have the information to argue against him saying that it was communist inspired, communist involved, all those things. That I can't rebut that. But if it was, you can't say that was the totality of the civil rights movement. You can't say that was the totality of what Dr. King and all them was doing. Because I mean, we can look at like how has Russia helped us? How has communism helped us? How has it helped black people at the end of the day? And now, if you're saying that they use black people to get at America and all those things, then hey, I don't have the information to argue that, so I'm not gonna jump off the porch and do all that stuff there. But it's still white people being white people. So you're mad at white people fighting against white people. That's not our fight, Chad. And now, if you want to be mad at it as an American, I mean, whatever, Chad. I ain't gonna argue with you on that, but. I don't think it's our place to get in between white people fighting against white people. The communists against the capitalists. Both systems. Oh, black people will be on the bottom. Both when you see black people under a communist system and we see black people under the capitalist system, guess what? They're still on the bottom. There you go. One man's revolutionary is another man's terrorist. I learned that a long time ago. I learned when America tells you that somebody is a terrorist, you need to study them. So, but I am recognizing flaws that they had in the civil rights movement as far as the expectations of the goodness in white people. or white people coming around and being like, yeah, we sorry for what we did and we're gonna atone for what we did. And if what Chad is saying, that they were used by the Communist Party in Russia, they crazy as hell, because you still trust in white supremacists.
Reaching a conclusion, and that's fair for you, because you'll say, look, I've done the historical research and I reached this conclusion, but I think you're reaching a conclusion where an argument should be, because your entire characterization of the civil rights era is basically this was communist and therefore it was negative, right? So it's either, and I mean, we're human beings, so sometimes you can have tension within your principles, but when I hear you say, you know, revolutions are not sustainable forms of social change, agitation, violence in the street, and then you say, well,
revolutions without power are not sustainable for people. Revolutions without power, a group of people who's revolting that don't have true power, is not sustainable. People who revolt, who have power, matter of fact, it's not a revolt, that's a war. It's not a revolt anymore, it's a war, because you are equal or more powerful than your opponent. That's a war now.
The American founding, sure, we had our own culture. The government who was ruling us was far away. I mean, black folk could say, look, we had our own culture for hundreds of years. The people who are ruling over us may be near, but we have similar grievances, right? We don't have representation. I was watching a video with you last night, actually, and it sounded like you were making an argument against enfranchising free black males post-Civil War. And you correct me if that argument was wrong, if I'm mischaracterizing it. So it seems as if there's some tension in your principles, and I'm just trying to understand that. The War for Independence, the American founding, was one point. The second point, and again, this is more contemporary, would you then, just given what you said about the ability of private enterprises to serve whom they want, to hire whom they want, would you then be in favor of, let's say, what conservatives characterize as DEI policies, where companies say we're going to favor Black, Hispanic, LGBT, women, whatever, non-white males in hiring and promotion over white males? Would you be in favor of that? And do you think federal or state law that prohibits that, would you characterize those as federal overreaches or government overreaches?
I'm going to try to reframe your question to understand it better.
Okay.
So are you asking, is it okay for a private organization, entity, school, company to have DEI policies? Is that what you're asking?
No, I want to put a finer point on it. When I say DEI, because people mean different things when they string those three letters together.
So, because Chad keeps being specific to private businesses. I'm noticing that. And so because Delano didn't specify whether the businesses were private or public. But Chad keeps going specifically, and that's why he was like, let me reframe it. I wouldn't have let him reframe my question. And that's the thing. I think Delano could have done a better job, because I wouldn't have allowed Chad to reframe the question. No, I didn't specify it down to private businesses. I asked the question the way I asked it. Answer the question the way I asked it. Don't reframe my question. Answer the question the way I asked it, because he didn't specify the private business. But listen to the different things that Chad is doing to try to manipulate himself into a winning position in this debate, and Delano is falling for it.
I'm talking specifically, if Coca-Cola in 1954 said we're not hiring Negroes, if we have Negroes, they bring the sodas into the restaurant and then they go on about their business. It sounds as if your position would be Coca-Cola has a right to do that. If Coca-Cola in 2026 says we're not hiring any more white dudes, to the extent that we have white dudes in this company, they will no longer get promotions. And when we have internal meetings, the people of color go in one room and the white people go in another room. I'm asking, would you be okay with that?
Constitutionally speaking, it's their right. Coca-Cola has a right to do what Coca-Cola wants to do. I might not like it. My neighbor might not like it, but I have nothing to do with Coca-Cola. I didn't put in the blood, sweat, and tears to build Coca-Cola. Therefore, what my opinion is, whether as a voter or just as a man on the streets, should have no bearing over, on what they do.
Basically, it don't affect me directly, so I don't care. That's basically what he's saying. It don't affect, because he knows damn well if he gets discriminated against, or he feels like he's discriminated against, or somebody does something racist to him, he's going to take offense to it. He's going to have a problem with it. He know he will. Stop lying. But basically, it's like he don't have nothing to do with Coca-Cola and none of that stuff, so it really don't matter to him.
So I mean, I don't know about the legalities over, the difference between publicly traded companies versus private, like legitimately private companies.
Right.
But even to the extent that there is a difference, I do believe that in many ways, a lot of what is done in this country is a complete betrayal, if you will, of our genuine constitutional principles. And so, speaking in terms of constitutional intent and the freedom of association, I don't believe. I do believe that Coca-Cola should have a right to run their business.
Basically saying if it's law, it's cool. Basically what he's getting at. If it's law, it's cool. No matter if it's detrimental, if it's harmful to one group. Basically, if it's helpful to white men, anything that's helpful to white men, Chad gonna be cool with. Basically. And white men, they make the laws. They enforce the laws. They control the laws. They empower those people that he's defending. They're empowered. Once again, you're talking about freedom of association. You're talking about laws being in place as if there's no power imbalance in place, Chad. Come on now. And of course, all of this is surrounding the, I guess you could say the effect that Dr. King and the civil rights movement had on America. Because, the question is, was MLK and the civil rights movement a net good or bad for America and Black Americans? Once again, like DEI, affirmative actions, and all these other things, other people benefited more than we did. Other people benefited from them more than we did, right? We should have been fighting for Black rights specific, other than civil rights, over civil rights rather, all those things there. So we get all that, but it's like, come on, man, like the way Chad is talking as if the system of white supremacy just doesn't exist, and Black people should have just been better Black people because white people were good white people, and we should have just been better Black people. And basically, he has a problem with the agitation because it stirred up white men, and white men didn't like it. And to my, does he know he's not white? That's funny. So it's okay for law or injustice, racial discrimination, etc., but not use law bring about justice. White supremacy plays both sides. Hey man, to be fair to the point, not to the people, there's a train of thought that it's okay for any business to do what they want. Of course. But he's also saying that, and that's why I threw out the power imbalance thing, because they can do that, and they do have the right to do that, and they do have the legality to do that. But just because it's law doesn't mean it's not detrimental. And like I just said, doesn't mean it's not detrimental to somebody. So under the law, they can legally do that. But is it under this power imbalance? You're going to have some detriments come out of that. So if you have an issue with whatever company, don't buy from. And that's the other thing too for Black people though, is you can't force yourself on somebody. That's why I was saying earlier, forced integration is a ticking time bomb. You can't force yourself on a group of people. Of course, they're going to revolt as well. They're going to be mad as well. They're going to be angry as well. But it's like Chad has taken the position of, I'm going to defend white people. Because like I said, there are things he said that I agree with, but he has to put it in proper context as well. So the 3/5 compromise was constitutional too, Chad. Other benefited because we didn't enforce our constitutional rights. Is he really FBA? He sounds like, I'm not sure what he is. I'm not sure what Chad is, but you know, once again, it's a school night, so I told you we weren't gonna get into the whole thing, but we got into a good bit of this, looking at Dr. King and the civil rights movement. I don't think Dr. King was bad for us. I think Dr. King needed to evolve, and he was evolving into something that could have been a force for us. Same with Malcolm, right? But I do believe that the civil rights movement benefited others more than it benefited us. And so in that regard, it didn't help us. It wasn't good for us because it didn't truly benefit us the way it needed to benefit us. And just because laws are passed, laws need to be enforced. Like when laws are passed for white people, they're enforced, but when so-called laws are passed for black people, they're not truly enforced, and other people seem to benefit more than we do. So, but to try, Jason Whitlock think he's slick though. He's trying to take a dump on Dr. King's legacy on the slide. And we see you, fat boy. We see you, Jason Whitlock. You lame for that. You are lame for that, Jason Whitlock. You a big lame for this. But we will revisit this at another time, at another date. This great MLK debate. It's a school night, so you know we got to get our stuff together. It's been a long day for me, but I want to make sure I get in and get this in and have a good conversation with you all. And I appreciate the good conversation that we had tonight. And remember, please share this video with other people so they can listen to it. Like, comment, subscribe, share. We can't let people create narratives about our leaders, of the people that we look up to, the people who fought for us. And that's why channels like mine and other channels, we have to make sure that we are pushing back against things like this and making sure that the truth is told, but also Dr. King ain't out here. They don't have Dr. King out here looking bad, right? Because he don't deserve that. He don't deserve that. Do we agree with everything he did? No. But he did enough. So that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. You can't get on Dr. King. You can't just dump on Dr. King like that. That doesn't mean, thank you, Renee, thank you. That doesn't mean Dr. King can't be criticized. I can be criticized. Everybody can be criticized. Anybody, anything that's put out in the public realm can be criticized. And I think all our leaders should be criticized, but in a constructive way. And what are we learning from the criticism? Not just to be like, hey, white people, look at me criticizing Dr. King because I'm Jason Whitlock and I stay on my knees for white men. So, hey, man, happy Tuesday. Please stay warm. Please stay warm. Please stay warm. Please stay warm out there. It's cold as hell down here in Florida, so I know y'all cold up north. Please stay warm. Remember, people keep talking about solutions. Every day, you should be working on yourself. You should be bettering yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. What are you reading, right? Are you exercising? Are you eating right? Are you in your community helping others get better? Are you using your gifts, your talents, and your abilities to help others in your community get better? Those are the solutions. Working together, using our talents and our abilities to uplift and empower each other. Those are the solutions, working together. Work. It takes work. It takes work. It takes work to change our situation. It takes work to take these chains off our mind. It takes work to get ourselves from under the thumb of white supremacy. And if we don't put in the work, and if we're not willing to put in the work, nothing gonna change. It's just like gardening. You can go out there, throw some seeds in the ground, but if you don't till the ground right, you don't tend to it and water and all that stuff there, you might not get it. So that's how we got to do it. So let's stay black. Let's stay bright. Let's stay shining. Let's stay doing our thing. Let's be great. And I'll see y'all live again on Saturday. I appreciate everybody for showing up tonight. I appreciate everybody continuing to support this channel. Remember, I have a video. What's my video dropping tomorrow at 1 p.m.? Oh, my video on Mumia Abu Jamal is dropping tomorrow at 1 p.m. So make sure you check it out. I'm highlighting Mumia Abu Jamal, why the system silenced Mumia Abu Jamal, and the thumbnail is they stole my freedom. So check it out. And we're going to keep doing what we're doing despite the shadow ban. And just remember, every day at 1 p.m. I'm dropping the video. Every Tuesday at 9 p.m., every Saturday at 3:30, unless I let you know the time will be different. But other than that, we do what we do, how we do, when we do, where we do, what we do. And we're going to keep growing. We're going to keep blowing. And we are great because that's how we were born to be. I'll see y'all next time.